What if the world's most powerful semiconductor giant finally got permission to sell its prized technology to its biggest rival, only for almost nobody to actually buy them? In mid-2026, the US government officially confirmed it was allowing Nvidia to ship its highly advanced H200 artificial intelligence chips to China. But there is a massive twist. Behind the scenes, a quiet tug-of-war between Washington, Beijing, and Nvidia has turned this multi-billion-dollar deal into a strategic standoff. While Nvidia is fighting to keep its grip on a $50 billion market, both governments are quietly making sure these chips almost never see the light of day. Here is how a seemingly massive trade victory turned into a trivial trickle.
To understand what is at stake, we need to look at the H200. The H200 is one of Nvidia's most powerful artificial intelligence chips, capable of training the massive software models that power modern AI. For years, the US government has tried to keep this technology out of China, fearing it could be used for military purposes. But China is a massive market, representing over $50 billion a year in potential chip sales. Nvidia desperately wants to sell there, but they are caught in a vice. On one side, US regulators are tightening the screws with strict rules. On the other side, Chinese officials are pushing their own companies to stop buying American tech altogether. It is a high-stakes chess match, where a single move can wipe out billions of dollars. This conflict did not happen overnight. Back in 2022 and 2023, the US government severely restricted chip exports to China. In response, Nvidia created a slower, modified chip called the H20 to fit within those strict US limits. For a while, Chinese tech giants bought them by the millions. But in April 2025, after a temporary reprieve, the US government suddenly required a special license to export even these slower H20 chips to China. The market panicked, and Nvidia's stock plummeted 6 to 7% in a single day. The rules of the game were changing fast, and Nvidia was about to pay a massive price for being caught in the middle.
The sudden restriction on the slower H20 chips hit Nvidia hard. Because of the abrupt policy shift, Nvidia was left holding mountain-sized piles of unsold inventory. In the first quarter of fiscal year 2026, the company suffered a staggering $4.5 billion write-down. Nvidia was forced to halt production of the chip entirely. Realizing that total bans were causing chaos, Washington decided to pivot. Instead of a blanket ban, they introduced a highly unusual and expensive compromise to allow Nvidia's top-tier chips back into the Chinese market under heavy surveillance.
In January 2026, the US Bureau of Industry and Security introduced a new system. Instead of automatically denying exports of the powerful H200 chip to China, they would review them on a case-by-case basis. But this access came with unprecedented strings attached. First, a presidential proclamation slapped a heavy 25% tariff on advanced semiconductors. Second, the US government demanded that these chips undergo physical inspections inside the United States before they could ever be exported. Washington eventually approved licenses for 10 select Chinese companies, including tech giants like Alibaba, Tencent, and ByteDance, allowing them to buy up to 75,000 H200 chips each. Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, confirmed they had received the licenses in March 2026. On paper, it looked like a massive win. But as soon as the US opened the door, Beijing slammed it from the inside. Despite ordering over 2 million H200 chips for 2026, Chinese tech firms suddenly found themselves blocked by their own government. China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology began quietly instructing domestic firms to buy local chips instead of American ones. Beijing wanted technological self-reliance, and they were willing to starve their own tech giants of Nvidia's hardware to get it. For months, the actual shipments of H200 chips sat at absolute zero. By mid-May 2026, not a single H200 chip had physically crossed the Chinese border. The truth finally came to light on July 14, 2026, during a tense congressional hearing in Washington.
U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce Jeffrey Kessler was grilled by lawmakers about whether American AI technology was leaking to China. Kessler revealed the shocking reality. He testified that despite the approved licenses, actual shipments of the H200 to China were minimal and represented a trivial amount of chips. This was the first official confirmation that the highly publicized trade deal was actually a ghost town. When the news broke that shipments were officially happening, even in tiny amounts, Nvidia's stock jumped over 4% to $211.80, but the reality on the ground was far from a success.
Why is the US government so obsessed with tracking these chips? Because smuggling is a massive problem. In a major federal court case, a Texas-based company called Huawei Global and its owner pleaded guilty to smuggling $160 million worth of restricted Nvidia H100 and H200 chips into China. Smugglers have been using complex networks of shell companies and overseas transshipment points to bypass US customs entirely. This has forced both US regulators and Nvidia to take extreme measures to police where their hardware actually ends up.
To stop these leaks, Nvidia had to make a painful choice. In July 2026, the company drastically tightened its rules for Asian buyers, introducing a strict whitelist of pre-approved clients who had passed intense compliance audits. The result was brutal. Nvidia cut its approved customer list in Asia by more than half. When news of this massive customer purge leaked, Nvidia's stock fell 3.5%. Analysts realized that Nvidia was actively cutting off its own business to prove to Washington that it could police its own supply chains. This constant disruption has opened a massive door for Nvidia's biggest rival inside China, Huawei. In March 2026, Huawei entered mass production with its new Ascend 950 PR chip. Huawei claims this new chip is nearly 3 times as powerful as Nvidia's older H20 chip. Huawei plans to produce 750,000 of these chips in 2026 alone. Analysts warn that because of US export controls and Beijing's pressure, Nvidia's market share in China is projected to collapse from 66% down to just 8%. Huawei is rapidly winning the war of attrition.
The battle is far from over. In Congress, lawmakers are pushing a bipartisan bill called the AI Overwatch Act, which passed a committee vote 42-2. If passed, it would block Nvidia from selling its next-generation Blackwell chips to China for 2 years and give Congress a direct veto over any future export licenses. Lawmakers like Representative Brian Mast argue that selling advanced chips to Chinese tech giants is a direct national security threat. Will the US completely shut the door on Nvidia, or will Huawei take over the Chinese market before Washington even gets the chance? What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the global tech war.